All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Todd Browse. I'm here. I'm your host for the evening. I'm here with Susan Schultz and Ashley Wilson, and we would like to welcome everyone to HBAP Startups. So let's get started. For those of you who are new to the Startups group, we have a few announcements at the beginning of each meeting, and we'll do some short networking breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together for our main event. First off is our mission. We're here to help foster and fortify an innovation and entrepreneur community coming out of the Harvard Business Analytics program. And our goal is to provide our members with the tools, knowledge, leadership, and confidence necessary to create and grow their businesses from the ground up. Susan.
And there are many ways to get and stay in touch with us. So we have our own website. We have the HBAP website. We have our YouTube site where all of the presentations, as long as the presenter said yay, are posted up there. And then we have a newsletter. We have a Slack channel for those that are actually in HBAP or have graduated from HBAP. And then, of course, bring somebody. This is really a wonderful community. And if you know anybody that's a little quirky and loves this kind of stuff that we talk about, invite them, bring them. They don't have to be an HBAPper. And then just a reminder that we do post everything publicly on our YouTube channel unless the speaker says otherwise. And we have lots of really cool stuff coming up, and starting with today, and Todd will do his usual wonderful introduction about Sherry, and Sherry comes to us from Dawn, which is so fun. And then next week, we have Shri coming back to us, our own Shri, who's now going to talk to us about transforming project management with AI and Gen AI, and he has presented this to a group within the Project Management Institute. So we're going to get his teachings on that next week, which is awesome. And then the week after that is Jorge. Is he on? Because I think I'm bastardizing your name, Jorge, but Jorge Yanat, who has written this cool book called Let's Get Digital, a transformation guide to the future of business and entrepreneurship. So that ought to be super cool too, because I think a lot of us are working on that.
I'm
And
here,
then,
Susan. Thank you for that. I'm here.
okay,
I'm on my phone today.
okay. And how do you say your name?
You can call me George, Jorge, George, Giorgio, whatever you feel that you want to call me that day, whatever. I answer to all those names.
Okay, awesome. That's great. And then the last week of October, we have Andrea Bremer, who is one of Kelly's students at Cal Lutheran. And her startup, Hortitech, is using NASA technology to basically transform agricultural wastewater into fertilizer. So just really making the whole system a lot more sustainable. And that's going to be really interesting to hear what she has to say. And then on November 13th, our own Rashan Umumwara, who works for Chevron Phillips, which is one of the largest chemical companies in the world. They make products for basically most industry sectors. And she's just finished running a competitive datathon to drive transformation within the finance department for this entire company. And she's going to talk about how she did it, some of the cool ideas that came out of it, and then also her lessons learned on how do you design and run a datathon so that it's successful. And then on November 20th, we have Swin Huang, who is the founder and creative director of the Number Two, which is an eyeglass company that she started because most eyeglasses around the world don't fit her kind of face that she describes as an Asian face. So she decided to solve the problem herself with her own company. So that ought to be really cool as well. So anyway, lots of cool stuff coming up. And then, of course, our code of conduct, just a reminder, right? This is a place where people can come and talk about things, listen to things, test ideas with us if that's what they want to do, and just really want to create this inclusive environment for everyone. And so a reminder that all rights are reserved by the presenter, and that our feedback process is really just to give positive feedback because that works the best for the presenter and gives them the most beneficial information to get better. And then always a reminder because we're honoring the rights of the presenter that no one can personally record anything of our sessions. And then, as always, if you've got an idea you want to talk to, or a conflict of interest, or something that you just want to talk through, reach out to Todd or me or Ashley or all three of us, and we will help you figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. All right, so let's do some short networking one-on-one breakout rooms. I will see you folks in about 5 or 6 minutes. Let me open all the rooms and enjoy. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a good time in your breakout rooms. Whoops, this is the wrong slide. Bear with me a second. Just as a little reminder, at the end of the evening tonight, when you leave, please, there'll be a little pop-up survey. Please fill it out. Feedback, we love it. And just as a reminder that the recording will be made public on our YouTube channel, and at the end of Sherry's presentation, we will end the recording, but we're going to stick around for some overtime, so I would like to invite all of you to do the same. And now it is my honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Sherry Gunther Shugerman. Sherry is a two-time Emmy Award-winning producer and media executive with 7 additional Emmy Award nominations. She's also got a Cable Ace Award and multiple film festival awards, and as a producer, Sherry holds an unparalleled track record of creating and producing some of television's top hits for the past years, including The Simpsons, Family Guy, Rugrats, Powerpuff Girls, and a whole lot more. Sherry has helmed studios and production divisions for 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers, Hanna Barbera, Klasky Csupo, and Nickelodeon. I've got hooks at Nickelodeon. And she was part of a team who launched the Cartoon Network. Sherry is currently producing an adult animated series for Netflix with Zack Snyder and team titled Twilight of the Gods. She's also a serial entrepreneur who has built several successful companies in the gaming digital tech space and a successful toy company with multi-platform brands, including a global retail and licensing division. Her latest venture, I'm going to try and get this pronounced correctly, KazooBadoo, is a K-5 educational platform for content-driven experiential learning and is currently launching into classrooms across California. Now, without further ado, as is our custom here at HBAP Startups, if we could all please briefly unmute ourselves, and let's give a warm round of applause to Sherry Shugerman. Sherry, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
So should I just go ahead and share my slides?
If you've got slides, please share them.
Okay.
Yours. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Hopefully you guys can see this.
Yes, we see your entire desktop.
I'm trying to, okay.
Now we can see your slides. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So, I sort of geared this based on our conversation and based on the examples I saw and just talking through my journey of, where I started and how I got here. And I'll sort of end it with KazooBadoo and the journey and where I am and what I'm doing with that. So I will get started. And do feel free to stop me at any time. And I know there's questions and answers at the end, but if you have something specific as I'm talking through it, please feel free to raise your hand and let me know. So I'm going to do a quick little intro video here. Can you guys see that?
We can see it. Don't hear any audio though. So
don't hear it.
you need to share audio when you shared your screen.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
That means that I need to stop sharing and reshare and include audio. Hold on one second. Usually it tells me. Okay. Does not give me the option of audio.
We see your presenter slide.
Correct, but I hang on a second. Usually when I go to share, it has the
There should be an option on the right. If you're running the latest Zoom on desktop, it should say share
Share
sound.
sound. Here it is. See, it used to be at the bottom. They
It used to
moved
be at the
it.
bottom.
Okay, here we go. We got it. All right. Sorry, guys.
Nope. You're great.
Okay, we see it?
Yes.
Okay, now let's make sure we can hear it. Here we go.
Perfect.
What the hell was that? Come on.
I dare Gadoo could be that girl. I can show you be the flavor, baby, with my googus. I dare Gadoo could be that girl. I can show you
Oh, that's nice.
with my googus.
What did you say?
Oh, I say that.
Hey there, little lady. This is getting really old, really fast. Yeah, whatever.
Oops. Start that over. Thank you. I will start at the beginning. I spent my childhood kind of moving around different parts of the world, and that had to do with the fact that my father was offered positions around the world. I lived in Israel, Africa, Europe, and ultimately made my way to the United States. I think that my childhood helped shape who I am today. It wasn't all roses. It was a lot of challenges, having to acclimate, having to learn new languages, having to fit in and all of that. But I look at it extremely fondly and grateful that I had the opportunity to experience different cultures and people and ways of life that enriched me and enabled me to be more empathetic and to understand people on a deeper level. And I believe that that's helped me to be the storyteller that I am today. So here we are. I started my education in applied mathematics and computer science. I was a girl who was good at math, so that was the natural progression. I went to UCSD because it was good at that, and I wanted to stay somewhat local to LA. And but after about a year of spending time in a lab, as good as I was at it, I absolutely knew that wasn't for me. I realized that I was a people person, that I really wanted to spend my life with people and not in a lab staring at a computer. So I transferred to UCLA and was trying to figure out my life. Was I going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and or what else was I going to do with my life? So I happened to have gotten a job opportunity at Marvel Productions. It was a complete happen chance. I wasn't looking for anything in the entertainment industry, not growing up here. I didn't grow up seeing stars and wanting to be in Hollywood. I really had no idea what it was or had no desire to necessarily be in it. But I did get a job at Marvel because my friend's dad was founded Marvel with Stan Lee at the time in Marvel production, the production division, and they needed help, believe it or not, answering phones after hours. And so I said, okay, I can do this because he said, do you, or maybe do you know a friend? And I said, yeah, I could do that. I can answer, I can study while I'm at the desk or whatever. So it worked out. And I did not expect this, but I really did fall in love with the whole the whole business. People were showing up to work in flip-flops and t-shirts, and they were making cartoons for a living. And I'm like, this is real? Like, people do this for a living? This is kind of cool. Again, not thinking of it as a career or anything like that. Across the way was the ink and paint room, where we still Xerox things onto cells and we're painting them. And that had just gone over to Japan, because it became too expensive in the US. But the ink and paint department was determining what color everything should be on cells. And I asked the head of the ink and paint department if there was an opportunity, if she would allow me the opportunity to take a test, because I actually paint with oil paints and I'm really great with color and I have a really good steady hand. So they gave me a test, and next thing I knew, I was working in the ink and paint department at Marvel. And I was so proud of myself. I was making $20 an hour. This is mid-late 80s. And I was all of 18 years old. And I was like, this is amazing. And I'm doing something so fun. I'm painting cells and deciding what color the skin and the hair and the clothes should be on every character. And I would take a stack of cells home. I would work all night. I would work around classes. I would be in the studio whenever I could. And they were extremely happy with my work creatively. And I was producing evidently more than anyone else. Of course, I'm a little nothing, trying to prove myself, as opposed to the people who were there just sort of doing their job. So it was all going great until I got a call from the union one day when I was at my desk. The head of the union called, and unbeknownst to me, there was really bad tension between the head of the studios, all the heads of all the animation studios at the time, and the head of the union, because they had just started sending work overseas following a strike. And he found out that I was, the boss's son's girlfriend, and said, "You need to drop the brush immediately." And I found out the harsh reality of the workplace. So tears in my eyes, I ran up to Lee Gunther's office at the time, and I said, "Lee, what do? I quit all my other jobs and I'm paying for school." And he said, "Don't worry about it. Go help out in production." And I said, "But I can't be here 9 to 5 because I go to school." And he said, "Just be here when you can. Don't worry about it." And the rest was, the rest is history. I never left production. I never left animation. What happened was that I discovered something that I was really good at. It combined my creative side with my organizational and managerial and people side, and the analytical side of putting together pipelines and organizing things and making them happen. So things that I didn't know about myself at that age yet, but I found out I was good at. And before long, I was pretty much running the production, because we had a production manager who was new, didn't really, so I was like, "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of it." And I just started taking care of things. So by the end of the season, the producer on the show said to me, basically said to the studio, "I want her as my production manager on my next show. I'm not doing another show without her." So I skipped a lot of years and a lot of levels, going from production assistant to production manager, and was now production manager on, we went from Glow Friends, My Little Pony, to Gem and the Holograms. So this was a time where Marvel was doing a lot of toy commercials for Hasbro. And Hasbro had figured out that, hey, we don't just have Saturday mornings for kids, we have afternoon blocks for kids. So let's program shows for them at that time. They bought the ad times for the afternoons, and then they started making toy commercial shows. And it was all going great until the FCC came out with a new regulation that said no more toy commercials in the middle of toy cartoons. This is pandering to kids. And 300 people were laid off at the same time, me being one of them. So again, I found the harsh realities of what it's like to be in entertainment. And I was laid off. Lucky for me, the producer on the show next to ours said, "Hey, my daughter-in-law runs production at Deke." It was another studio down the street. They need good people. I'll put in a good word for you. Go see her. And I did, and I got the job. And I was an associate producer on no less than 3 shows while trying to finish up college. And I absolutely hated it. I hated it not because I didn't love the nature of the job or the people, but because this was a studio that didn't value quality, that didn't value making things that you were proud of. It was just about getting it out the door as cheaply and quickly as possible. And I realized at that time that my values did not align with that. I kept the job until I was done with school and I graduated from UCLA. And at that time, I quit and I decided, okay, now I really want to learn the business. I've decided this is what I want to do with my life. And if that's the case, then I want to be an expert at it. So I realized that there were only certain aspects of production that I learned being in the kind of studios and jobs that I was doing. And so I went to work for a studio called Bakshi Productions. It was Ralph Bakshi, who was a very famous animator in the 70s, who had come back. He got the rights to to Mighty Mouse and came out with the New Adventures of Mighty Mouse for CBS. And I was the supervisor I was the post-production supervisor, so I could learn film to video and editing and all of the things involved with, sound production, etc. I was working at Bakshi for about 9 months until the show got canceled. We had a show creator, John Crispolucci, who later went on to create Ren and Stimpy, who was a little wild, and had a joke in there about Mighty Mouse sniffing a flower and then being really happy. So a reverend decided that this was a Coke joke, and John till this day denies it, but who knows? And it became a big thing, and the show was canceled. So I got a call from a friend. They happened to be looking for a production manager at Walt Disney Feature Animation, which was the very, very beginning of Disney creating features and trying to create a pipeline where they would put one out every other year. So it was the very beginning of it. It was a great time to be there. We started with Oliver and Company, and we finished that project and then went to The Little Mermaid. And I had just started working on The Little Mermaid. The nice thing about working at Disney again was that I learned everything from beginning to end, because in features, everything was being done in-house, and we spent a lot of time on everything from scene planning to camera to layout and animation, and all the things that were being done overseas with television were now being done in-house. So we continued. So it was a great learning ground, but things in features move very slowly. And so one day I got a call from Tom Klein, the guy who used to run Bakshi Productions for him. And Tom called me at home and said, "Sherry, how would you like to come back and this time run Bakshi Studios?" And I'm like, "What?" I go, "First of all, why me? And second of all, where are you going?" And or it was the other way around. Where are you going and why me? And he said, "Well, I've had enough of Ralph. I can't do Ralph anymore. And you're the only person I know who can handle Ralph and do the job. So what do you think?" And I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds, and I said yes. And the reasons were that I as soon as I started comparing the feature world to the television world, I realized I'm more of a TV person. I like the pace of it. I like making 12 episodes at the same time as I would be working on 3 scenes for a movie. And also this was an incredible opportunity. I knew if I'd stayed at Disney, I would be a production manager for many years to come before moving to the next level. And here I was going to run a TV studio. And yes, Ralph Bakshi was pretty much crazy by any definition of the word. And there are lots of really fun stories about it, but I did get along really well with him, and he did respect me to the point where I could tell him that he needed to do something and he would do it. I ultimately ended up having a great relationship with him, great run at it. We produced the Butter Battle book by Dr. Seuss. And that was an incredible, incredible opportunity because we would head up, Ralph and I would go up to Ted Geisel's house and stay up there for the day up in La Jolla at the top of the world there, and show him dailies and talk through the film. And at the same time, he was working on Oh, the Places You'll Go. And he would actually show us manuscript pages. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. And till this day, it's my absolute favorite of his books. But we worked on several pilots for primetime television, actually, even before The Simpsons, and several specials. And at the end of it, Ralph got into an accident, had to go convalesce in New York, where he was from, and I was left to sort of finish everything up. And when we were finished, I had to lay off my amazing crew. The one thing that I feel like I really learned from Ralph was how to identify and nurture talent, and that was a gift that he gave me, and that I feel has really helped me in my career. And we had some amazing stars who have since gone on to win Oscars, run Pixar, run Warner Brothers, run Simpsons, etc. But at the time, I laid everybody off, and we were all pretty young. We were all somewhere in our 20s. I think I was younger than everyone else, but not by much. And a lot of my directors went over to a little studio in Hollywood that no one had ever heard of. And one day I got a call from Rich Moore, one of my directors at the time, who had gone over to Klasky Csupo, and he's since won a couple Oscars. But he called me and he said, Sherry, we really, really, really need you here. Will you please talk to them when they call you? And I said, okay. We at the time were negotiating Cool World with Paramount for Ralph. So I knew that I would go on to work on the film, but it was pretty slow at that time. I was just doing post-production. So I went over to Klasky Csupo, which was this artsy little studio. At the time, it was on Seward Street with 13 people working out of a hallway. And they were giving me a tour and showing me artwork from this show they were working on. And I whispered to Rich, I said, Rich, these are really ugly designs. Who's going to watch this? And he said to me, I know, but read the script. So in my, all of my, 23-year-old arrogance, I said to them, well, can I read the script and let you know in the morning? And they said, sure. And I took the script home and I read it, and it was the funniest script I'd ever read. And I called first thing in the morning and I said, I'm in. And it turned out that it was the very, very early days. What had happened was Klasky Csupo was just really just a mom and pop shop that did some freelance work, and happened to do the Max Headroom little shorts for a producer who is now working for Gracie Films, which is Jim Brooks's company that started The Simpsons. So when they decided to make little shorts, and they actually thought of them as comic strips for the Tracy Ullman show at the time, she said to them, Lorena Adamson's her name, and she said to them, I'll tell you what, I have a studio in mind that does things really cheap. And so Klasky Csupo got to bid on it. And like I said, at the time, Jim Brooks was just thinking it would just be little comic strips, black and white, just something to spice up the Tracy Ullman show. And, Klasky Csupo was like, nah, we should animate it and we can make it really colorful and, we can do it cheap. And they literally hired 3 animators straight out of Cal Arts. And those 3 animators went on to animate, storyboard, layout, animate, do everything up to ink and paint and camera on every one of those shorts. And so they were able to do it extremely cheaply and make them great. And at that, and then of course the story goes that when the strips ended, when the shorts ended, the viewers were starting to write to Fox saying, what happened to The Simpsons is the only reason I watched the Tracy Ullman show. And Fox is like, well, let's make a series out of this. So sure enough, they go to Klasky Csupo and say, okay, now we want a series. And Klasky Csupo had no idea how to budget a series, how to plan a series. And they're like, sure. And they kind of based it on what it cost them to do the shorts and gave them a really ridiculous budget. So now all of a sudden they're in production. The first episode came back and it was a disaster. It looked horrible. It was not funny. It was not good. It was just really bad. Tensions were high between Gracie Films and Klasky Csupo. They didn't have enough crew. There was no way they were going to finish it. And that's basically when they called me. So my task was really to dig in there. And, you know, the first thing we did is we moved buildings to Highland and Fountain. If any of you live in LA or visited LA and have driven past those buildings, one of them still has pictures of Rugrats and other characters that Klasky Csupo created. And staffed up, which was not easy because it was a show that was so different. It was more like a sitcom than a fully animated gag-oriented show, so required different kinds of crew, and a lot of people couldn't do the work. A lot of the trained animators couldn't unlearn what they knew. So we had to go around the country and go to all the art schools and sort of do the do's and don'ts of The Simpsons and give people tests and stuff. And we ended up hiring a very young crew that had no discipline. Was very difficult to manage. Meanwhile, our friends over at Gracie Films really wanted to change everything every minute of the day, because in live action, they can go to the run through the night before air and say, oop, that joke isn't landing, let's rewrite it. And by the next day, it was shot the way it was. However, animation takes months to go through the process, and they wanted to rewrite the show and make changes all the way through. And I was the lucky one who had to tell them no when they'd never heard no, because they were Jim Brooks's company. And it was a very, very tough job. And I often worked till 2 a.m. and you know, it was a thankless, difficult job where I was sort of the bad guy to everybody from my crew to Fox, and didn't really know how to navigate it, you know, on a personal level. And I think I learned a lot then after that. But the good news is we managed to put out a great show. The show kept winning Emmys and being nominated and getting critical acclaim. And at one point I had to go to Fox and sit in front of all the brass there. And I remember walking in, and the head of finance and production looked at me and said, how old are you? In those days, you could ask those questions. And he's like, well, let's start with this. Have you ever done this before? And I said, well, I've worked in Marvel and Deke and Bakshi and Disney features. He goes, whoa, that's more places than I've worked. I'm good. But ultimately proceeded to have to walk them through my budget and why it needed to be double what it was. And even then it was really low, and how things were being produced. And I said, well, let me just educate you on the process and what we do and how we do it and why it needs to be this way or whatever. And I kind of walked them through the whole thing. And at the end of it, they're like, I'm sold. We're good. This is amazing. Thank you. And the head of 20th Television called my boss, Gunther Shugerman, and said, don't you ever let that little girl go. So it was, so at that point, we had just, Nickelodeon had just walked through the doors like a couple weeks before that and said, we are going to all the artsy studios, not the regular animation studios that do Saturday morning, because we're starting a new animation division and we want to do like really cool stuff that's way higher quality. Can you come up with an idea for us? We literally had no ideas, but we stayed up all night and ultimately pitched them a show. How about, and it was because Arlene Klasky had just had a baby. So she's like, how about the show from the point of view of babies? And they're like, okay, that will never happen again. It was like a moment in history that was just incredibly timely and amazing. And, you know, from there, you know, to me, that is an example of why I always say it's never about the idea. It's always about the execution. Because what happens is you can have a really mediocre idea, but if you have a team that can execute great characters and build out the worlds and make interesting stories and really engage you, you have the ability to build something really great. But you can have an incredible idea, and if you're not writing it well, and if you're not designing it well, and if you're not executing it well, it just isn't going to go anywhere. So Rugrats was perfect proof of that. The idea was just could have gone any which way, but we had great writers. We had all these Eastern European artists who created those jagged lines that the art films had in those days in Eastern Europe. And we hired a young director, Peter Chung, who really understood how to make the angles be from the point of view of babies, and all of that put together. Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo did the music for Rugrats, and all of it came together to create a hit franchise for Nickelodeon. But at that point, Gabor Chupo said to me, I'd like you to run everything in the studio because I don't know business. I don't want to deal with anything. You just handle it all. So I became supervising producer of Rugrats. I remained the producer on The Simpsons, and I also took over the special project division, which we were doing main title openings, like In Living Color, and all of those we shot. And then we also did artwork for the background of Rolling Stones. And so there were all kinds of fun projects that we did through that division. Anyway, I stayed at Klasky Csupo for about 5 years. And during that time, worked with Lily Tomlin doing the Edith Ann specials for NBC primetime, and Duckman, which was a comic strip a comic book that Gabor and I found at one of the shows, and Everett Peck, who unfortunately just passed away, created it, was an incredible artist and a very funny guy. And we optioned Duckman and ultimately got it financed by Bertelsmann and Paramount and sold it to USA Network. So we were producing that as well. And so I had an incredible time in growth opportunity at Klasky Csupo. It was time to leave. Gabor and Arlene were splitting up. We all became collateral for which side we were on, and it became very political. I had just had a baby. I just did not need that negativity in my life. And I was starting to think about, what do I do next? And I got a call from a recruiter that they were looking for a head of production for Hanna Barbera cartoons. So at that time, Turner bought Hanna Barbera, along with 5 other libraries like MGM and other libraries for cartoon content. So he launched the Cartoon Network, and initially it was all library properties, meaning existing animations. So he bought Hanna Barbera for its library, but it came with a studio that hadn't produced a hit in 15 years. And they basically called me in and they said, we need you to do what you did over there at Klasky Csupo. Because at Klasky Csupo, obviously, I took it from 13 people in a hallway to 300 people, and one of the most thriving artsy studios in town that was doing really high quality. So they really wanted that infusion here. They wanted us to be able to turn the studio around and to create the new generation of cartoons. So it all sounded great. And I'm like, what an honor. It's like a keys to a kingdom. Hanna Barbera is an iconic studio. I said, what do you have in development? Because basically Scott Sassa and Ted Turner said to me, well, we want to be on the air and we want to beat Nickelodeon's butt in the ratings in 1 year. And I said, what's in development? What do you have? What's the pipeline? And they're like, nothing. So it was time to get innovative and think outside the box. And I had a very, very wonderful mentor and boss who is the president, and his name is Fred Seibert. And I just finished writing a business case, actually, about him that was published by Harvard Business Publishing and several other global publishing companies. But anyway, Fred was a very innovative thinker, knew nothing about animation, but really could think outside the box. And we brainstormed it and ultimately came up with the idea of doing shorts on the run. In other words, we didn't have the time to do the traditional take pitches, decide which ones should go to pilot, produce a pilot, test focused group the pilot and then produce a series on it, which would take at least 2, 3, 4 years and would yield maybe 1 or 2 shows. So the idea here was, why don't we create a TV series that had 3 cartoons in each half hour, and each of them would be a pilot for a new IP. And brilliant idea, impossible execution. Because think about it, you have to feed the beast. You have to continually find new things and put them into not development, but production, meaning there's an air date. And in those days, it wasn't like the streaming that we have today where I can go, oh, let's launch it next month instead. We literally have an air date and it cannot move because there's ad revenue and everything else. And that you have to deliver it to the minute when you had to deliver it. And not only that, but since each one of the cartoons was a different project, it also meant that it had a different team, because our whole idea was we're going to let the creators execute and see if they have what it takes. And so there were a few that had 2 and 3 shorts based on the same IP, but we had 48 that were basically, different cartoons and different teams, etc. And somehow I made it happen. Somehow I took a company that was basically, it was run like a factory. It was, really, really interesting to me. It was literally, everything was departmentalized, and each department was sort of its own beast and was worried about its own cost center rather than where it fit in the process. And instead of being show units that were, cast artists and talent based on the needs of the show, everything went through the same storyboard, everything went through the same design department. So everything looked the same, which is why they couldn't produce any hits. And so we completely had to reorganize it and restructure it, but managed to do it and managed to get even the old timers excited about the new vision, and brought in a lot of young talent and mixed them up with mentors that could really teach them how to do it right. And it was a great combination. And we ultimately ended up with Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, Courage the Cowardly Dog. Seth MacFarlane came out of that program. He later went on to do Family Guy, obviously. Butch Hartman, who went on to do Fairly Odd Parents, came out of that program, and many, many, many more young stars. So it was very, very successful. And 2 years down the line, we had 5 series that ultimately carried the network for the next 30 years. That, with those creators sometimes coming up with new ones, but pretty much being all from that program. And that was all probably the most magical job I ever had, in that I had, like I said, the keys to the kingdom with Hanna Barbera. I had and I had the network side of things. So I wasn't a studio coming up with great stuff and hoping I can pitch it and get something through at the networks, nor was I at the network going, come on, pitch me something good. But instead, I had both sides. So if we knew we had something good, we just put it through. And that was, and I had the resources to do it right. And it was really, and I was surrounded by really smart colleagues. There was a lot of enthusiasm and great energy. It was really, really a magical, wonderful job. But like all good things, it came to a crash when Time Warner and Turner merged. And it was supposed to be a merger, but really it was an acquisition. And Time Warner kind of took over everything. Somebody upstairs said, hey, let's just make, we have 2 animation divisions with Warner Brothers Animation and Hanna Barbera. Why don't we just make them all one? Which I could see where that would make sense, but maybe dig deeper, because ultimately we were as different as 2 companies could be, from a culture point of view, from a pipeline point of view, from a budgetary, everything about it. We were a development into production pipeline that was very high end and quality, and very much cartoons. And Warner Brothers was all about taking library content and making new content out of it that was more story driven and less gag oriented. And it was just very, very, very different, and much lower budgets for the WB network. So I wrote it out in order to allow my team to acclimate and get them through the move and all that, and enough to see that I was going to have to dismantle everything that I just built, and it was going to blow up in their faces, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And so I was pregnant with my second child at that point, and I decided this is a great time for me to take a little break. And I asked them to buy me out of my contract because my job changed enough, and they did. And the story there went that about a year and a half later, it blew up in their faces, and they spun out the Cartoon Network Studios, which was basically the old Hanna Barbera. But at this point, there's no reason branding wise it made more sense as the Cartoon Network. But they put that team as the Cartoon Network Studios. Funny how history repeats itself, because Aslov coming in with Discovery just now to Warner Brothers actually shuttered the Cartoon Network Studios and recombined them. So we don't learn from our mistakes. Let's see how that goes. But at least for at that time, they did spin it out to the Cartoon Network later on after I'd left. So I had left, had my baby, and a couple months later, Fred Seibert, who was my boss at Hanna Barbera, and he was the first to go during the merger, had gone over to Nickelodeon and had a first look deal with them to do shorts and other things and be a consultant for them. And he called me and he said, listen, they want me to start a movie division, direct-to-video movie division. Will you head that up for me? And so I went over to Nickelodeon and started this new direct-to-video division. And we hired writers and designers and started production on the 2 movies. They were really good, actually, great music and great stories. About halfway through, the executive who was in charge of it sat us down and said, we decided to do some focus groups, and we found out that actually parents don't like to buy originals when they buy direct to video. They want to buy videos of movies that already exist and that already have a name. And I'm thinking to myself, should that not have been research we did before we started this? But evidently not. So they said, we're definitely going to finish these 2. We think they're great, but we're not going to keep this division moving forward. And so I had about, I think, 6 months left to finish these up. And I got a call from the head of production at Fox, and who I'd worked with on The Simpsons. And he's the guy who called Gunther Shugerman at the time. And he said to me, listen, I need you over here. We just sold a show to the network, meaning 20th Century Television sold it to Fox Broadcasting. So it's within the company, but it's, it's a different division. We just sold the network a new show by a young creator, and I can't have this cost what The Simpsons cost. And I know you'll be able to figure it out. Can you come work on our side this time instead of the animation studio? And I said, what's the show? Who's the creator? And he said, well, the show's Family Guy, and the creator is Seth MacFarlane. Well, ironically, I'd hired Seth straight out of RISD to come work for Hanna Barbera, to come do his short at the time, because he pitched us a short, Larry and Steve. And Larry and Steve was about a dumb guy with a really smart dog, and their whole exchange. And it was, Peter and Brian. And it was very funny and very clever. And he did all the voices on it, but it wasn't a cartoon. It just didn't fit our slate. And so when we were done producing it, we realized we're not going to go to series with it. And I said, but you're really funny. I'm going to put you on as a writer on Johnny Bravo, which we are taking to series. So he was a writer on Johnny Bravo. And I said, but on a personal level, if I were you, make it into a family sitcom and go sell it to Fox. And that's exactly what he did. So this was 5 years later, and he sold Family Guy. So I called my boss, Fred, and I said, listen, I have this opportunity. I would never leave you high and dry, but would you be open to me doing both, simultaneously for the next 6 months while I finish up these movies and start up over there? And he goes, if anyone can do it, you can, go ahead. So I got permission from both sides, and I finished up the movies at Nickelodeon and started up Family Guy at 20th Century Fox. And when I came on board, they had already done a deal with an animation studio called Film Roman at the time. And because they always did the writing and the voice recording and the post-production at Fox, but then they did the animation at the animation studio, just like Klasky Csupo did the animation for Simpsons, King of the Hill, and Futurama were done at Film Roman. And so they said, okay, well, we already have a good relationship with Film Roman. Let's just have them do, let's have them do Family Guy. And we had a pretty rough time the first year because primetime animation was exploding. Everybody was doing a bunch of shows. Film Roman, because they had the Fox shows, got to sell 2 of their own shows. So now they had back end on these shows, which they didn't on the Fox shows. So they put all their best talent on the shows where they owned them, the shows that they owned. And we were getting the C talent on Family Guy. And Seth was very frustrated in redrawing everything, and we weren't happy with the quality, and we were having to redo a lot of stuff. And so at the end of the season, the head writer, the exec producer, showrunner, and Seth MacFarlane went to Fox and said, why are we doing it at Film Roman? We have Sherry here. Can't we do it in-house? And so we already had kind of a studio set up where we had the writer's room and the recording and all that in the post. And they said, well, why don't we just add the animators here? So Fox said, no, we don't do animation. We can't do it in-house. We won't do it. And I said, I'll tell you what. I go, what are your reasons? And they gave me all of their objections. They said, oh, liability, union, And I said, okay. So first of all, we're paying everyone at Film Roman much higher rates than the union rates. So union's not a problem for you. In fact, it'll normalize everything. Secondly, liability, if they go over budget, you're paying for it. Trust me, they're not out of pocket. In fact, see those desks and computers and all these things that you pay for every year on the budget? They're not getting new ones every year on the budget. You're just paying for them. But if it was in-house, you would only pay for whatever you actually bought. I go, and every time we make a change, ka-ching, ka-ching, change order, we need overage, whether it costs them anything or not. But if it was in-house, we could probably sneak a lot of those changes in through the system. So anyway, I did a whole business plan for them, and I showed them, why their liability was actually not going to increase, but decrease doing it in-house, and had to talk to the labor attorneys, had to talk to casting, had to talk to everybody involved. And ultimately they decided to allow us to do it. And we opened up 20th Century Fox's own in-house animation studio, where they still produce all of their shows through until today. In fact, eventually Simpsons also came under that umbrella back to in-house. Family Guy lasted 3 seasons the first time around and was canceled. It never found its audience. We launched after the Super Bowl in the coveted spot on Sunday night to a great audience. And about 3 weeks later, Doug Herzog, who was a young new president of the network, decided to move us. And when he moved us to a new animation block he was putting on Tuesday night, and it was with King of the Hill and Futurama, and nobody found us there because everybody was used to Sunday night Fox animation. And so we weren't doing well in the ratings, and we asked him, when are we moving back to Sunday night? And he goes, well, I can't do that to Malcolm in the Middle. And we said, didn't you just do that to us? And he said, no, I have other plans for you. And then the following season, we moved to Thursday night, a whole new night, only he put us up against Friends. So that was the death of us. They did not renew the show, and we all dispersed. The story on Family Guy, to close that loop, is that Mike Lazo, who is running Adult Swim on Cartoon Network, was a fan of the show, had seen it a couple years after it stopped airing on Fox. He went to Fox and said, hey, can I pay you a few pennies and air it on my network? And, in other words, he wanted to license it, and he paid them almost nothing. And they said, sure, it's just collecting dust on the shelf. Go ahead. And he put it on Adult Swim. He promoted it properly, and it found its perfect audience, that 18 to 34-year-old male that loves animation and that's sensibilities. And ultimately did incredibly well on the Cartoon Network, to where Fox said, well, why don't we make DVDs of this? At the time, DVDs were where you made your second run money. And usually,
Hey, Gary, sorry for
did.
interrupting. How are we doing on time? You okay?
I'm okay on time. Am I going too long to do?
No, I'm loving this because I'm loving you, and this your career is amazing. But keep going. I don't want to stop you.
Okay,
I
because
just want to
I
get to
mean, I feel like stories always have good lessons, so I kind of go into them, but I can definitely scale back and keep going. But anyway,
keep going. Keep going. Don't
okay.
stop.
So ultimately they put out DVDs. It was the best-selling DVD of all times at that point. And they said, why aren't we making this show? So 5 years later, they brought it back. I was not part of it. At that point, I was doing other things. I became the go-to person for primetime animated pilots, because they would call the head of 20th and say, hey, how do we do this? We only do live action here. We don't know what to do. We got an animated pilot picked up, and he would say, call Sherry. So I became the go-to person. I did a bunch of pilots for Touchstone, Imagine, 20th Television, and more. And then one of the creators of one of the pilots ended up being tapped to write the Back in Action movie, and he convinced Warner Brothers that in order to reintroduce audiences to the adult nature of of Looney Tunes and how clever they were and political they were, rather than kids' cartoons, that we needed to make new animated shorts for theater. But he insisted that he wanted a new unit. He didn't want to go through Warner Brothers TV animation because their stuff was too low quality. He wanted to do this as real feature shorts and start his own division, and he wanted to bring me on to run it. So I created a whole, business plan for them, and they said, okay. And they gave me every penny I asked for. And we had Simpson writers, we had the best animators in the business, and we made incredible theatrical shorts of Looney Tunes that ultimately never saw the light of day, because the movie was testing so badly and the shorts were testing so well that they were afraid that people would compare. So they basically buried them. But you can sort of find them online, sometimes, and I have videos somewhere in my garage. But it was a good 3.5 years of making really incredible shorts that predicted the future in ways that were really eerie and scary. And we had to actually redo a bunch of it because of events that occurred that the shorts mirrored. So that was kind of interesting. So at that point, I turned around and said, okay, I can do this with my eyes closed. Now what do I do? What's next for me? I'm still young. What do I want to do with my life? And I decided that I would enroll in the executive MBA program at USC Marshall. And that's where I met Don Jordan. And yay. And it was really about, that was a cool effect, Todd. Zoom has these crazy things that happen when you lift your hands up. I know. Anyway, it was really about exploring, what else do I want to do, and what, and what's out there, et cetera. And at the same time, converging with this, I saw a trend of kids starting to play games online. There was no mobile yet. It was all online. And when I went to talk to the studios about it, nobody was ready. I said, yeah, we see it's coming, but really not ready to deal with it. So I said, okay, this is my opportunity to do a startup. And I launched my first startup. And here's where I'm going to tell a gut-wrenching story, but I believe it's a very valuable story to learn from. I was always an entrepreneur, but I didn't know that because when I would be given a project, I had to basically start from scratch, sometimes, by finding a building and desks and equipment, but definitely starting at the beginning with hiring a crew, setting the pipelines, figuring out how it's going to work, and running it. But taking a chance on myself, not working for the establishment and for the studio was definitely a step that took me a minute to feel comfortable with. And I had a friend, a really close friend of mine from college, who was like a sister to me, who married a Harvard MBA guy who managed money for a living. And he would, and she and I were super, super close, but she's a surgeon, you know, with her residencies and you know, jobs and whatever, took her all over the world. And ultimately we weren't in the same city or super close. So I didn't get to know her husband really well, except that by extension, you know, I felt like he was like family because he, you know, married Shelley. And he would call me every couple years with some harebrained idea of, because he really wanted to get in entertainment somehow. And he would kept calling me with ideas and none of them ever had legs, and I would let him down easy and whatever. And he happened to call me right when I finished making the business plan for Zookazoo. And Zookazoo was a virtual world for kids where they could go in, create an avatar. I don't know if you could see these little characters. They could be a panda, they could be a toilet paper roll, they could be anything they wanted to be. And they walked around the world and chatted with their friends. And it was a world of worlds, and each world had games that were thematic. And for the very first time, we were pioneers in that I had music and sound effects and sort of a whole atmosphere that didn't exist yet in online gaming. But as I was making this business plan at the time, John happened to call me with an idea, and I said, you know what, John, I don't see that one, but I really want to do this thing. It's this online virtual world thing, and it's becoming a big deal with Club Penguin. And I think there's a really good opportunity to do it better and deeper. And, you know, coming from animation and really bringing the high quality art to it and all this stuff. And I said, but I have no idea how to raise money. I don't, you know, that part of it is, you know, elusive to me. And I said, will you be my partner? And we could be 50-50 and you raise money and I'll do everything else. And he agreed. And I proceeded to share everything with him. I started to hire people from animation to come to gaming, which was a big deal at the time. Some of the best talent I knew. And we started executing. And one day John called me and said, so I raised the money, but I'm folding this into a company that I already own with my friends. And I said, no, that's not what we talked about. We're partners. We're going to co-own this, and we're supposed to start a fresh company that we own together. And I'm being very generous, giving you 50% of my company just for raising money, but it's okay. I want to be partners, and I want to partner, and let's do this. And he said, well, I'm not going to do that. I've already folded it into this other company, and that's what I got the funding based on. And I'm going to be the CEO. My friend David's going to be the COO. What title would you like? And I was stunned, honestly. And I said, John, this is not going to work. And he goes, well, the three of us are going to have, two of us are going to take 30% each. You're going to get 10%, and the rest is for the investors and the employee pool. And I said, whoa, how in the world do I end up with 10% of my own company? You're crazy. I'm not doing this. And he goes, well, we're going to do this with or without you. I already have the people. I already have everything you've got. And I'm going to do this with or without you. And your choice. And, you know, I have to say that what was really difficult is that I was going through a divorce at the time. And I, you know, wanted a clean cut easily as much as anyone could ever want one, but my ex-husband really wanted to hang on, and did so by dragging me through court for 5 years. So I had lost everything that I had. You know, to lawyers, I was, you know, in court hell. So there's no way that I was going to get entangled in a court in a suit over this, knowing full well nobody wins with that. Walking away wasn't an option. It was something I created and felt very strongly about. And so I proceeded as it was. He made all kinds of promises. Well, there are other IP in the company, and you will get a salary. Well, we won't, because he knew that I needed a salary at that time. et cetera, et cetera. None of all of that turned out to be true. There was nothing else in the company. They proceeded to pay themselves more than they were paying me. They created a board that I wasn't a part of. It was not pretty. It was the most disrespectful, horrific thing that's ever happened to me. And it hurts till today that I actually let that happen. But, I've learned a lot from it. I've learned a lot about doing my due diligence on people, because if I had dug deeper, I would have learned all about him. Because people like that don't start out doing that. They do it over and over. And I should have papered everything before sharing anything with him, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately ended up building an incredible website. It was organically growing. We had 80,000 users without doing anything. And at that point, but relationship was not good. The relationship was getting tenser by the minute, because at first they just let me do my thing because they knew they didn't know what to do. But as they got more comfortable, they started calling my art director and saying, let's do a pizza thing, because we saw a pizza thing on Club Penguin. And my art director's like, I'm not doing the copy thing. That's not who I am, and I came to work for you. Who is this idiot? And so I had all kinds of issues with that. I had gone to them and said, hey, we need money. We need to spend money on marketing. And he said, no, we're viral. And I said, what does that mean? We still need to get a critical mass of people. We need to get out there. We're not going to get there by just word of mouth. We'll get there a lot slower or whatever. We need to spend it. But they were spending money on offices in Palo Alto for themselves, where they were doing nothing, and all kinds of other things. And so I decided to take matters in my own hands with marketing. I reached out through my connections at Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was owned by MTV, by Viacom, and MTV Online Networks owned addictinggames.com. So I got to the general manager of Addicting Games, and I showed him what I had, and I said, hey, can we do an affiliates deal? Can we, where you drive traffic to us and we share the revenue with you? And he said to me, Sherry, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I see dozens of these a week because everyone's trying to emulate Club Penguin. But this is so good. He goes, you're so far ahead of everybody else. Can I share this with my partners at MTV Online? And I said, sure. Next thing I knew, we had $100 million acquisition offer by MTV Online. And a lot of it was earnout, but I believe that with Nickelodeon by our side, we could get there. And I called John and I said, great news, we have this. And he goes, you can't talk to them. I'm going to take over now. I'm the CEO. I'm going to hire a banker. We're going to make this into a bidding war. And I'm like, John, we have no revenue. This is an incredibly generous offer because they know where we could go, because they trust me. I've done things for them before. Just let this play out. Let this be a feel-good deal. Let this happen. And he refused. He told them they can't talk to me, and they got weirded out by it. He then hired a banker and went to New York, basically gave his hand to the head of mergers and acquisitions of Viacom. And a week later, I got the call saying, we love you. You have an office here anytime you want, but we are not doing a deal with your partner. The deal's off the table. And at that point, he called me and said, hey, what are we going to do? We're out of money. And I said, now you want my advice? So this is unbelievable. And I said, well, what about Time Warner? They seemed really interested, because we did take other meetings with a banker. And so Time Warner decided they wanted to invest, but he was keeping me completely out of the negotiations. I never met with them, never heard. I would have to call him and go, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, well, it's proceeding. It was very clear that he was going to just let me go as soon as, they came in. And it was a really, really tough time. And one day I got a call from his partner, who is really not a nice person to me. And he says, hey, how would you like to hop on a call with me with Time Warner? And I said, oh, okay. And I hung up the phone and I'm like, why is he being nice to me? And why would he include me on a call? But whatever. So I get on the call, and the lady there says, you're the key person. You're the reason we're investing, and we've never met you. We wanted to talk to you. We wanted to know if you're happy, if you're thinking about leaving, if you're lost any key people. And I'd lost my art director. And, you know, if you're getting what you want, blah, blah, blah. And he's answering for me. He's like, oh yeah, she's great. She's happy. And I'm sitting there going, what do I do here? And I have no idea what to do. And I got off the phone and I called everybody that I knew who I could trust, you know, from a legal and business perspective, to say, what do I do? Do I stay silent, in which case I'm basically lying to an investor? Or do I say something, in which case they're going to get me on breach of fiduciary duties? I'm like, I don't know where to go with this. And the consensus was, you have to allow them to talk to you. And if they decide to talk to you, then you need to be honest. And that's not, you know, that's your fiduciary duty, is to be honest. And so I called and I was really relieved I didn't get them. I just said, it was really great to meet you on the phone yesterday. Just wanted to let you know, if you have any questions for me or want to talk to me, feel free to call. And half hour later, they called. Are you happy? Do you plan to stay? How is the relationship with the partners? Have you lost any key employees? And I answered it as delicately and politically correct as I could, towing the line, basically saying, I think you guys could really help us figure out, you know, the roles. And I think, you know, that you know, there's some room for improvement for us, and, you know, but I totally believe in the product. It's going to be incredible, you know, and this is where the potential is, blah, blah, blah. Well, they dropped out, and he sued me. But you know, I'm happy to say I countersued, and ultimately they had to pay me a few peanuts, but it was just more the principle than anything else. But it was horrifically heartbreaking. But I learned so much from it. I learned so much about, you know, how to form a partnership, you know, being able to establish my own value. I learned how kids play online most importantly, because I was able to watch them in real time, and it was incredible. I learned about technology and, you know, and gaming, and I learned that, you know, there was just so much that I took away with me. And at that time, I was just graduating the program, and you know, at USC, and I had met through one of the panels in our entrepreneurship class, the former president of the Tech Coast Angels came to speak to us, and they had me sit on a panel with him to judge the companies that were pitching. And so I met him, and he's like, you know, and I told, you know, he asked me, he goes, I've heard about you from your professor, tell me what you're doing. And I told him all about what was happening with Zoo-Kazoo, and he actually helped advise me. So you know, at that or whatever. But at that point I was like, well, you know, here's what I really learned. I can do this again. They can't. So it was really short-sighted and stupid of them to do what they did. And as painful as it is, I'm going to pick up the pieces and do it again. So at that point, I was starting a new venture, and Steve Block was his name, took me into the Tech Coast Angels, and ended up getting $1 million investment. I built an incredible beta for My Mini Peeps, which is a world where kids ran the world. And it was really forward thinking, in that it was using Unity for the first time in online gaming. And it was more 3D and more immersive, and steampunk and cool, and really had a lot of potential. But timing is everything when it comes to startups. And I know I'm talking to a bunch of startup founders, so you guys all know this, but you know, what had happened with virtual worlds online is that there was a huge overexposure, for one thing, because Club Penguin sold to Disney for $350 million with a $350 million earnout. And then everybody was trying to emulate it. So you got a bunch of technologists who had credibility in Silicon Valley going to VCs and saying, I could do a virtual world. And instead of penguins, it was dinosaurs. And but there was nothing new about it. There was nothing innovative about it. And it completely lacked the heart of what it takes to engage kids and what made Club Penguin successful. And so all of them failed miserably. They were getting millions and millions of dollars to build something that they could have done for $1 million, and they were just wasting it, and it was just all going bad. So that was one element that was not helpful to me trying to raise money after that first round. But the second thing that happened is, and which is actually more important, and this is where timing also plays into it, is that everything went mobile. Connectivity became, faster broadband access made everything go mobile. And so online gaming was starting to fall, and everyone was playing casual mobile games rather than MMOGs or virtual worlds. And for us to go mobile was not feasible yet because the real-time play was not possible with the connectivity as it was. So I was struggling. I had a few almosts with a few VCs and, was sort of doing my thing. And at that point, well, there's some personal things too. I won't get into it. I did get cancer. So I kind of had to put it on hold, and I knew that I couldn't go out fundraising while I was dealing with it. But once I got better, I was kind of back at it, starting to get a little bit of traction, but again, the world had completely changed by then. And so in some Sorry, I didn't know there was music on that. Okay. I'd borrowed a slide from another deck. I forgot there was music there. So this thing fell in my lap. I got a call one day from a friend. It actually was a kid's friend's dad who happened to run radio stations in LA. And he said, I just got out of a meeting that where they were asking my advice. It's a startup company that got a bunch of money to go explore different ideas. So almost unheard of, but these guys got it was like $100 million to just go start companies. Like they had no business plan, no actual companies, or just like go do stuff with it. And they were a digital agency. They were two very smart guys and with obviously very good relationships. And this guy just gave them $100 million, go do it. So, one of their ideas was, one of them was a dad of a little girl, and she loved pop music, but of course the lyrics weren't appropriate for her. And he thought, what if we came up with a doll that sings lyrics that are good? And but they had no idea what they were doing, so they went to this radio guy, and they were trying to figure it out. And so he said, I immediately thought of you because the kids world. And I said, well, I'm not really a toy person. And he goes, you'll know what to do. He goes, will you just take the meeting with them? And I said, I always take the meeting. And again, another, thing that I like to say and tell my students is like, I always take the meeting. You just never know who you're going to meet and what's going to happen. I went and met with them. I was very impressed with the two guys. And they showed me these dolls they had made prototypes of. And I thought, oh, God help me. These are horrible. They're basically a mishmash of Barbie and Bratz, both of which I hate. And so I'm like, and there was nothing unique or original or cool about them. And they said, will you just come in and like help us develop this? And what do you think? And, it was at that moment that I'm like, what do I think? Do I tell them the truth of what I think? Or do I just, just tell them what they want to hear? And I'm like, I have nothing to lose. I don't care. I go, I'll do them a much bigger favor if I tell them the truth, even if they don't like me at the end. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, dolls is the most saturated aisle in the toy store. And if you're going to do dolls, then you really have to do something way cooler and more unique looking. And the guy said, that's exactly what my wife said. And I said, well, your wife's a very smart woman. And anyway, they said, would you get involved? And I said, well, I just, how do you compete with Mattel? How do you compete with, dolls are notoriously difficult to launch in retail. And I said, so let me think about it. And I kind of took some time to think about it. And I came back to them with a presentation and I said, I think there's an opportunity to launch something digitally, because in order to launch any kind of brand, you really need to have a media property behind it. And going to the networks and pitching ideas is a 1 in a million haystack game. And it would behoove you to take advantage of the times with kids playing on, watching YouTube. And YouTube was just starting to emerge. It was 2011. So it was about 5-6 years in, and kids were just starting to find it. And there was a huge discovery thing, and for kids on YouTube. And I said, kids listen to music, kids play games, kids watch videos on YouTube. Why don't we create something and launch it to them on sort of everywhere? It's a property that exists everywhere they are. And so, and they said, we love it. It's great. Will you come in and do it? And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm still trying to get my startup off the ground. Why don't we give this 3 months and this budget? And it wasn't a very big budget. And let me develop something and let's see where we end up. And if it's something worth pursuing and it's the right timing for me, then I will pursue it. If not, I will make sure I put somebody really good with you guys to execute it. And if it's nothing, then we all tried. So I went into it with that. I ended up creating the Beatrix Girls. I got a very iconic designer, actually met him at Hanna Barbera, but at that point he was at Sony doing, designs on features. And I said, I want it to look like no other doll has ever looked. And as you can tell, the heads are massive, and it's more so in real life. Because usually when you draw it, the head's bigger, but these dolls actually are that big in real life. And tapped a platinum selling writer producer who was writing for Kesha and One Direction to come up with lyrically appropriate but very trendy music that's empowering and fun. And I said Go-Go's inspired, just the kind of music you want to hear with the top down, and that makes you feel good. And started creating unique personalities for the dolls and creating a world around them, and came up with the idea that they're real pop stars who create real music. They just happen to be 12-inch plastic. So we started shooting videos of the dolls trying to make it in the real world with the challenges that they have being 12-inch plastic, and each with their unique personality that would really appeal to young girls. And we shot a bunch of, so I created the prototypes, and then we shot videos with the prototypes and put them up on YouTube, and pretty quickly hit into the millions. I said, okay, well, let's see what these are worth. But I knew nothing about retail. So went to Toy Fair, networked around, met some people who knew people, and got a toy rep, and they took us into Toys R Us. And the toy buyer literally sat like this the whole time going, I don't know what to make of this. These are weird looking dolls. And then she started playing with them. She goes, wow, really good quality. Wow, look at how much hair they have. Actually, these are pretty cool. I go, would you like to see the content? And she's like, okay. And we started playing the videos with the original music and the quirky, funny videos. And her whole body language relaxed. She just started laughing. And she goes, oh my God, this is amazing. You have to make much, much more of this. And she said, okay, I'm putting in an order. And we walked out of there, and the buyer said they never put in an order on the spot. They've never picked up a doll line from an unknown toy company, much less non-toy company. And this is incredible. Anyway, ended up selling the Beatrix Girls all over the world. And what was really cool is we were also able to get a lot of licensing deals. So we had strategic partnerships. We had licensees who were paying us money to put the images of the dolls on their products. And we had a nice run for about 3 years until Bratz decided to relaunch. And they were spending $20 million in TV advertising, which we literally could not compete with. And that was the year we were going into brick and mortar at Walmart for the first time, and Target, et cetera. And that was just not the right move to go up against a $20 million advertising campaign. So at that point, I went to my investors and said, I don't want to waste your money on that $3 million campaign because we're going to die and we're not going to be seen. And even though we're a much better product, it doesn't matter. By the time people figure it out, we'll be dead. And so I'd rather, if TV is what's selling, let me go make a TV series because that's what I do. So I went to MIPCOM, found partners, had multiple offers, ended up with a German company out of Munich who became my partner, funded a pilot, brought on another partner from Spain who had Latin America distribution. So we had distribution worldwide. And we went and took it to Disney. Disney said, we love it, just we want to see what a pilot looks like. We then got Spin Master to come on board as the toy company. So I would not need to be a toy company anymore because, by the way, part I skipped is I had to build a toy company that I ran for those 3 years out of the US and had offices in Hong Kong as well for manufacturing. But anyway, Spin Master came on board. All of it was contingent upon us finding a network. So we started taking it to networks around the world. We're getting some traction, and then they sold the company. They sold the company and then they left the company. And at that point, this became the orphan that wasn't invented here. And I no longer had partners. So I took it to the streamers here. And while everybody loved it, they couldn't figure out if it fit in animation or in live action. And it was the shoebox problem. It just didn't fit in a shoebox for them. And ultimately, no one took the bite and the pandemic hit. And at that point, I had been trying to get this thing off the ground for over 3 years. And I thought, okay, I think I need to move on and put this aside for the moment. I still own the IP. I still plan to take it out one day, but for right now, it's dormant. And at that point, I was inspired by the idea by what was going on around me with regards to education. And hence KazooBadoo was born. And that is what I'm working on currently. So KazooBadoo is an experiential learning app. And it is born out of the idea that for a very long time, the educational system and the way we teach kids has been antiquated and doesn't fit the way kids actually consume information today. And yet it was very closed off for a very long time, where book publishers pretty much owned the school systems and what was taught in the curriculum and the content. And the pandemic changed all that. The pandemic made people more open to solutions because it was a crisis of, oh my God, we already can't engage them in the classroom. What do we do now? And so it became a conversation. And so I said, what can I be doing from my perspective of really knowing how to educate kids and knowing how to get kids engaged to bring that engagement to learning? And as I continued to ideate, I was talking to a lot of the managing partners of the top VC firms in ed tech, and they're like, incredible, love it, very unique. We're not hearing anything else like this, and you're just the person to execute this. Go build an MVP, pilot it in classrooms, and I'm in. So I proceeded to build, an MVP. And to test it. All of that took about 3 years, because by the time I ideated it, built the platform, raised enough money to build the MVP, built the MVP, and then got into enough classrooms to really kind of do a fair pilot. That's basically how long it took. In that time, the VC community has gone to, we only invest in $1 million revenue plus. I don't care how early stage we are. And it's been a sort of my frustration over the past year, not being able to get funded and move this thing forward. But I want to show you guys a quick video.
Welcome to KazooBadoo,
a groundbreaking AI-driven platform that transforms education by allowing kids to actually experience learning in our fantastical, immersive world full of curriculum-driven, story-based lesson quests in a wide range of subjects. As a child, I grew up living on various continents and experiencing diverse cultures cultures, people, and stories. I learned multiple languages through immersion and visited ruins and monuments that most people only learn about through books and lectures. My childhood shaped me into a storyteller who intuitively understands how people engage and connect, leading me to a career as a multi-Emmy award-winning producer of huge hits in kids entertainment and as a serial entrepreneur with successful companies in the kids' tech, gaming, and toy spaces. I want all children to have the same opportunities as I did to grow and thrive. This is why we are building KazooBadoo, where we combine the power of AI, the magic of animated immersive worlds, and the efficacy of experiential story-based learning to deliver educational content that makes kids fall in love with learning. Education is ripe for disruption. At KazooBadoo, we recognize that kids are digital natives, and we leverage emerging technologies and our Hollywood expertise to engage them. In KazooBadoo's History Lesson Quest, we dropped the student's avatar in the middle of the March on Washington in 1963. There, they experience the events, people, and stories from this memorable day in history, resulting in improved comprehension and retention.
Throughout the quest, you learn about important figures. Can you name some of the individuals that you learned about through your conversations? Connor?
Colvin, Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks. There was one more. She was the one that led the whole bus boycott. Yes?
Robinson.
Yeah, very good. Joan Robinson, Claudette Colvin, Rosa Parks, huge influential people there.
We have already proven that we can produce rich, immersive experiences that are effective and loved by educators, parents, and kids. Now we're excited to leverage the fast progression of generative AI to increase the level of immersiveness and interactivity. No longer constrained by our ability to create branching narratives, we'll be able to democratize access to transformative education. To bring this vision to life, I have assembled an all-star team of leading creatives, educators, game designers, and technologists. Our CTO has led engineering at Yahoo Games, Uber, and more, and our award-winning game designer is credited with 2 of the most successful games in history and has been a leader in AI gaming for decades. We are ready to begin production on our 3rd through 5th grade multiplication and division lesson module with 20 challenging math quests of increasing difficulty where students get to go up in space and help fix their alien friend's rocket ship.
I really like this, Mom.
Join KazooBadoo and help us transform education. And
Welcome to KazooBadoo.
And one last thing I will say is for the past 4 years, in addition to KazooBadoo, I've been producing a Netflix series. It is an adult animated Norse mythology series with Zack Snyder called Twilight of the Gods. And it just dropped on Netflix in September. We were in the top 10 for the first 8 days, I think it was. And now waiting on pins and needles for a second season. So that is, I continue to produce and stay fresh in that world, and that's where I've been. So I'm gonna stop now and let you guys ask questions because I've been doing a lot of talking.
This is incredible.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, you are why we have HBAP startups. You are now, by the way, one of my absolute heroes. Can I be your friend? Can I please be your friend? Can you come hang out with us on Wednesday nights, please?
I would be honored. This sounds like an amazing group.
Seriously incredible. Folks, if you have any questions, please raise your hands. I'll call on you. Dawn, thank you for this introduction. Andrea, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Sherry. What a great presentation. I'm so inspired.
Thank you.
Also by your strength, your grit, your unwavering motivation. It's just so impressive. Some things that stood out to me. So obviously I am quite young. And when you mentioned, going into rooms and the comments being made of your youth, and then it seems like from an early age, you developed such a strong sense of leadership and confidence. So I like to dissect that and learn more about, going into these insane rooms with such successful people and creating such successful shows. I just like to learn more about how that experience was for you and any pieces of advice that you could share.
Let's see. There's never a time where you don't feel a little bit like an imposter or, or, oh my God, this is so intimidating. These people are amazing or whatever. And I think if you lose that humility, you lose your center. And I think that it's okay to feel that, but it's also okay to dig deep and know why you're in that room and what you have to offer and believe in that and be able to put that forward. And I always just, especially in those days, being young, being a woman, was very different. And, there are a lot more young professionals that are super successful nowadays than there were back then. And there are a lot more women in high positions than they were back then. Still not enough, but way more. So, I just, for the good or the bad of it, I just refused to pay attention to it. I just did my thing. And it was like, if I didn't think about it, then let them think about it. I don't care, but I'm going to do the best job I can do. And I'm going to be the best at what I do. And that should speak for itself. And it carried me. It didn't always make fans or friends because people resented it or were jealous of it or whatever, but I didn't care. I was just like, I just sort of forged forward and focused on who I am and what I'm doing and didn't worry about it. And not to say it wasn't an issue or a problem or, it didn't get in my way, but I really refused to allow it to.
Thank you. I really love the piece on humility as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. We'll go to Victor, then we'll go to Sri after that, and then Ashley.
Yes, thank you, Sherry. It's a real pleasure to meet you, and thank you for sharing your story, especially the difficult parts.
Thanks.
I am not even sure where to start, but I saw in your presentation a couple of threads. One of them is your remarkable foresight. It seemed to me that in every situation, you were able to look past it, step out of it, and look beyond it. Even with technology, to follow those trends and leverage it to where you are right now. Is that just part of who you are, or is that a result of these difficult challenges that you've been through?
That's a really interesting question. I think it's just who I am.
Me too, by the way.
I think it's actually not always been a blessing. Sometimes it can be a curse to be too ahead of yourself, too ahead of your time. Beatrix Girls at the time was the first IP to understand that there needed to be a 360-degree entertainment component around it. Nowadays, you don't launch, there's no toy product out there that doesn't have entertainment around it and other things around it. So but it also made it a lot more difficult to explain the value of that to retailers, and because they still went, oh, how much will you spend on TV advertising? I'm like, I'm guiding millions of kids straight from my website to your online store. Like, that is so much better than a commercial on TV. But they were still set in their path, and it still was all about how much are you going to give me in TV advertising or whatever. It's a very different world now. They recognize the value of YouTube and digital and social media and capital, but it does sometimes make it difficult. And but I refuse to do it any other way. I don't like to play where everybody is. I like to be, I like being ahead of the pack. I like leading innovation. I that's what excites me. I like carving my own path.
Yes, and if I can, a second question, a little more on the personal side, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm wondering, through everything that you described tonight, and even some things that you probably didn't touch on, did you ever lose your sense of self, your sense of your talent in your industries, or your ability to take difficult situations and spin them into success, or any of those things that got you where you are right now?
Oh, wow. I don't think I ever lost a sense of self or confidence in what I know I can do. I've definitely been discouraged at times.
Sure.
Feeling like, why is it so hard? Like, why can't I, why can't I just succeed and just, everything be easy? But, and there are times where it's tough. Actually, and this is something I didn't touch upon, but going into the whole entrepreneurial side of things for 12 years, I wasn't producing. And it wasn't a conscious choice. It was just, well, I'm doing this now. And to me, I was still producing content. I was still producing content within digital gaming. I was still producing content for the dolls. I was still in entertainment, but I wasn't in animation production. And our business is so much, what have you done lately? And our business is so much out of sight, out of mind, that when I came off of Beatrix Girls and I was trying to figure out my next step, I was like, okay, well, I kind of need to work now because I've been doing this for 3 years with no salary. And I tried to get back into the business, and I could not believe how hard it was, because I had kind of, like, the people that used to be where they weren't there anymore in, as heads of studios or whatever. And even though with my track record or whatever, it was almost sometimes an intimidation for younger, studio heads or whatever to hire me as a producer or whatever. And it took me over a year to get a job. And by the way, like every job I've ever had, except my startups, I didn't find it. I've never applied for a job and gotten it. It always was a call that I got. And I think it's just the nature of our business. But it turned out Zack Snyder's people were looking for a strong producer. They went to the head of the studio that they used to work with at Warner Brothers. He happened to be my executive on Looney Tunes shorts and had gone over to head up DreamWorks. So they called him because he knew animation, and they said, hey, who do you know that's really strong in animation? And he said, oh, easy, Sherry Gunther. And I owe him the job I just had. But it's a tough position to be in when you're not in control of being able to apply and get a job, like in every other industry. And so it can be very frustrating, and you can doubt yourself, like, oh my God, am I ever going to work again? Like, are you kidding? Like, I know I can do this with my eyes closed. I know I'm really good at it, but I'm not being given a chance. So I don't think I ever lost my sense of self or my confidence in what I can do, because I think I've proven it enough times. I think it's just to myself anyway, but I think it was just more that I have been discouraged. I have been, I have struggled at times, just like everybody else,
Sure. Thanks so much for addressing that, because it was also evident as you were telling your story tonight that I couldn't imagine that you've lost a sense of yourself at any point. And I want to finish by wishing you ongoing good health.
Thank you.
And all the success that you've so well earned. Thank you for talking with us tonight.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Victor. Just time check on how you're doing, Sherry. I know there's a bunch of hands, and we also have a question for overtime. So once we stop recording, we're going to go to another person who's got a question for you after that's done. How are you doing on time?
I'm okay.
You're okay. All right. So we got time. Sri, Ashley. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I dedicated this evening to you guys. I'm good.
Thank you. Sri, then Ashley, then Kelly, and then Susan.
This is simply awesome listening to your storytelling. It's very impressive. A lot of learnings there. I have 3 questions, but you can choose one to answer, okay? The first question will be, being a creative producer, content and stuff, being on schedule, managing scope, right? And also assuring quality, there's a lot of challenge. I come from a program management background. So I always don't want to compromise on quality. And of course, you being a creator, you want the perfection at the end of the day. So how did you manage? What are the top recipes you used quickly to get on schedule? Because they're all aggressive on target, because it's a very highly competitive market to launch a program or an episode for the TV broadcasting. That's the first question. Then second, quickly I'll cover, looks like you did all the right thing from a creative production perspective, but sounds like the legal aspects of things of trusting people, where, you know, people let you down. From listening to this, I see that. So maybe if you are given another opportunity to go back and set right things out, in what would you advise before you get too excited on signing up any contract and any creative work, because you know you can do it? But then what would you advise from the legal aspect? I'll limit to 2 questions. You can choose which one to answer. And thank you so much for bringing this, Todd, Susan, and Ashley.
Of course. I'll quickly answer your first one. I mean, look, producing is always about juggling and balancing quality and resources, which is time and money, right? And so if we had our way, we would be redo until it's perfect. Understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect, but, you know, allowing it to be good, to be really good. You know, and I think the more experience I became as a producer, the better I was at allocating and managing resources. Because when you hire the right people, the right teams, then you know how to manage them and you allocate them the right amount of time, things get done right, and you're able to get better quality. And then I am somebody that pushes all the time. I push and I push and I push, and not in a way that, you know, overworks people, but in a way that I know where to push and I know what will make a difference on the screen. And, you know, and there are things that, for instance, on Twilight of the Gods that I did in negotiating our contract with a French studio, you know, for quality level or for, you know, percentage of retakes that we're able to do and things like that, that I made sure were in there, or that I made sure that we had the time in our budget and our schedule to do it right, because I knew what it would take to make this such a massive show. So that's my best answer to the first one. The second question, with regards to trusting people, I am a very trusting person, but I have certainly learned my lesson with my my partnership story. And I don't trust easily, and I don't, that is why I've been a solo founder, to my detriment sometimes, but, you know, until now, since then, I've always been a solo founder. That said, I just recently walked away from a $10 million investment, and I did it because it wasn't the right deal to honor what I was bringing to the table. And it was, you know, long story short, but it was a venture studio that was forming. They were getting, they were getting some money to start the venture studio. They're basically asking me to shut KazooBadoo down, bring it into their venture studio, and run their whole ed tech and entertainment division, where KazooBadoo would be the star, but there would be much more than that. And they wanted me to own 10% of it or something. And I said, this is just, it sounded so reminiscent of Zookazoo to me that I went, oh my God. And then it went from bad to worse, because when I pushed, I said, I just don't even see how you could offer me that. Like, you know, where's the $8 to $10 million valuation this clearly is worth? And where's the, you know, and how do you expect me to come in and bring my IP and only give me 10%? If I were to bring a CEO to my company, I would expect to give them 20 to 30% of the company, just for them running it from scratch. But now I'm bringing an IP of a company that has something really valuable here that we've built and vetted and all that. But at the end of the day, the guy actually used almost identical words, where he said, well, we're going to do this with or without you. We'll just become your competitor. And I said, I welcome the competition. Good luck to you. I said, fear is not what's going to get me into this deal. And, you know, and I'm a very different situation and position at this point with this guy, but I knew not to share anything with him. I knew not to divulge anything. And I knew not to put myself in a situation where I had to take any kind of deal. And, you know, that's, so you learn from your mistakes, and that's all I can say.
Thank you, Sherry. Wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sri. Kelly Kimball, and then Ashley.
Hey, Sherry.
Hi.
Turns out we met together during the private thing, and we're neighbors. So my
Yes.
first question is, when are we going to have coffee?
I'm excited.
And Sherry, I have so many questions. I would love to sit down personally and ask you a whole bunch of them, but for this, You've wandered into a career that's probably the most devastating and loneliest career you can possibly come up with, especially being a solo founder, as you just described yourself. And as a solo founder, as somebody who's been through a little, you probably got as many scars on your back now as you need to call yourself a real true to life entrepreneur. Who do you trust? When the loneliness part can be horrible for an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So who
Yeah.
do you go to actually, find that relief and find that ability to relax?
Right. So, boy, a lot of people. I'm surrounded by people I trust, in that I really value their opinions and such, in various areas of my life, personally, professionally, and in various ways professionally. So when I say I'm a solo founder, yes, I start this thing on my own, but I never do it by myself. As you guys all know, entrepreneurship, much like entertainment, is a team effort. And it's not something you can do out of your room in your garage and expect to go anywhere. So the first thing I always do is I bring on advisors. The difference is that instead of going to someone and saying, okay, here's 50% of my company, come work with me, I go and I say, hey, I really value what you bring to the table. If you can get as excited about this as I am and bring this to the table, I'd love to have you come on as an advisor for equity. And so I am generous with people, and I do give, them equity to be a part of it. And the team that you saw on the little video that I showed has been with me the entire time from the beginning. The CTO was the first call I made, Lee Crawford, and I said, Lee, I'm thinking about doing this and I wouldn't even think about doing it without you. What do you think? And he goes, I love it. I'm in. And we sat and iterated for days and weeks and months before we actually started the company and did all that. I joined Darlene on, and she helped me shape the story and the platform. And I brought in a teacher who's phenomenally innovative to bring in the curriculum side of things and the classroom perspective. And I have a marketing person that's helping me with social and digital media, et cetera. So we're all working on this thing. We're all, it's still a team, and I trust them profusely, and I'm grateful to them to no end that they have stuck with me and with KazooBadoo, and that they continue to work and believe in this. And it's, it's never a lone one person thing ever. So. And the doll company got funded. I got several $1 million right away once I got the Toys R Us deal, because I had to start manufacturing, et cetera. So I built a full-on company. I had 15 employees, from sales to marketing to product design to et cetera, et cetera. And the people oversaw manufacturing in Hong Kong, and logistics people, et cetera, et cetera. So that was definitely not lonely either, but yeah.
Good for you. And I know Ashley's next. What you're going to notice about Ashley, she's created an app that puts children in her Zoom. These are not real children.
They're not real.
They're all digital. It's an amazing
They're
technology.
very cute for not being real.
That the AI is strong here.
And so I'd like to call on Ashley. Actually, John Wilson. We'd like to call on John Wilson.
John Wilson, do you have a question for Miss Sherry?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Can you get this? Can you
Ask
get the?
Hi, John.
Hi.
Okay.
What do I do?
What's your question?
Ask her your question that you prepared.
Can you get this thing on Amazon tablets?
KazooBadoo.
Yes, you can. You can get it. You can download it on
Amazon tablets.
You can do it on any Android or Apple device, and you can also play it on your browser. So like online.
We're going to send you a new user. All right, we've got a second question.
Look,
who's up?
Art's coming on. Archer, get over here. Get your butt on that screen.
Wow.
How long have you been working? How long have you been working on your career?
Oh boy. I've been working on my career 30 something years.
30 something. And also, if I was going to do what you do, how would I start off?
Wow, what a great question. I think you would want to talk to people in that industry and see if they can give you advice on where to start. You would want maybe have an opportunity with one of them.
Thank you, Sherry. What a great honor it was to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
They're
Ashley,
adorable.
and the rest of the Wilson family. Kenneth, and then we'll go to Susan to help wrap this up.
Hi Sherry, thank you for your presentation. I've definitely grew up watching some of your shows, especially on Cartoon Network. So thank you for that. So my question, I actually have two, but I guess they're quick ones. So my first question was, I was wondering what your why was. That's like one thing that popped up in your head, because you're a human being like the rest of us, and even though you have a successful career, you've been through a lot of trials and tribulations. So I was just curious what motivated you to keep coming back, like keep on, like growing.
The entrepreneurship side, you mean?
Yeah, just in terms of, okay, you experience a lot of failures, like even I wouldn't really call them failures, but like a lesson with your your partner in the past, right? You had a passion and they kind of just got took under you. A lot of people would give up, a lot of people would with their vices, but I was just curious, like, and you were going through a divorce as well, right? And I feel like in that situation, it's easy to say, okay, hey, I've had a successful career. I can make a lot of money. I can make a decent amount of money, a stable, just like life, just being like a vice president of animation at an amazing company. But you said, no, like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to recover and I'm going to start something again. Like, what? I want to know your why. Like, what pushed you to, like, keep on doing what you're doing? That makes
That's a
sense.
great question. So I guess it's funny you brought the divorce with the same analogy. Why did I get remarried? I think I think at the end of the day, I'm a pretty optimistic person. So just because one thing didn't work out doesn't mean that it can't work out next time. And I guess my why, the driver is always, first of all, I think once you become an entrepreneur and you get hit by that bug, you're just an entrepreneur at heart, and you're always thinking in those terms of like what's next and what's exciting me. And I think the exciting me is what drives me. And so when Zoo Kazoo failed and fell apart or whatever, I was like, oh my God, but it was such an incredible thing to do, and I want to do it again, and I want to do it right. And that's why I started Masher Media and my mini peeps. And even though that didn't move forward, the doll thing was something I turned into an entrepreneurship thing. And ultimately they just gave me the company because it was my thing. But it just was something that I got involved with and made happen, and it just kind of took over itself. And then when that was sort of came to the end of its run, there was something that inspired me within the educational community. I mean, I've always been passionate about trying to reform education. I watch my kids go through the school system, and my kids are brilliant, and they're now in their mid and late 20s and doing phenomenal for their age, and just doing phenomenal, period. But they were not, typical learners, and they each had their own thing, and I watched the school system just be so inadequate for them, and yet there was nothing I could do about it. And all of a sudden I felt like there was, and I felt inspired by the idea of being able to get kids to fall in love with learning, to have an easier time learning, to be able to engage them in it, and discover how cool it can be. Because I loved school. I was a nerd. I loved school, and I really enjoyed learning all through school. And so I really want to inspire that in other kids, and I feel like I have the tools to do that with, and that's my why this time around.
Okay, so it was your passion. And just quick follow-up, because I know you're an entrepreneur. Do you believe in work-life balance, or is that just
Oh,
Quick.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that it sounds like I'm completely crazy. And in my early years, I didn't value it at all. In my 20s, I worked like a dog. I worked till all hours of the night, as I was working up the ladder in production. But once I had kids, it completely rebalanced. It was about, I had to spend quality time with my kids. I was room mom. I volunteered in the classroom once a week. I went on all the field trips, and I was running Hanna Barbera. And there was just time to do everything. You just can. And and then now that my kids are grown, I play tennis 4 days a week. I have a lot of friends. I'm very, very active in my life aside from professionally, but I don't know, you find time. I think, the thing that I do that's interesting, and my kids commented on this, because for them, they leave work when they're done with work, and I'm always on. So I could be answering an email at 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't bother me. I just like check, and there's an email, I'll just answer it and it's done. And so but I could also make plans in the middle of the day, and I have no problem doing it because it doesn't really matter. I get it done. It just all integrated for me. But I love what I do, so I don't feel like, oh, I gotta leave work behind. I hate this. It's never like that for me.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Kenneth. Dawn Jordan. And then we'll toss it to Susan. We'll end the recording there, and please just stick around for overtime. Dawn.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Sherry, for chatting with us and sharing your story. And I know you all have been really impressed. And I mean, it's amazing to hear Sherry's journey, but I have to tell you, just as a person, I mean, Sherry and I are not close friends. So Sherry and I, we know each other. That was like 14, 16 years ago that we were in class. And I just sent Sherry an email, and I haven't talked to Sherry in a very long time, although we're like LinkedIn friends. And I said, hey, would you be interested in doing this? I think, it would be fantastic. And she replied right away to my message, even though, we are not close friends and have not really talked to each other in a while. So I just want to say, her journey is incredible, but I think that speaks volumes about the kind of person she is too. So thanks so much, Sherry.
Thanks, Dawn. That's actually one of my philosophies. I never don't respond. And I am seriously offended when you email people, even if you don't know them, but you email them, you take the time and you explain whatever, and they don't respond. And it's like, or if you have a great meeting with them and then you send them a follow-up and they don't respond to it, and you're like, how hard is it to just say, great meeting you, or what, something, but
your network, the network that you built and that, allowed you to kind of do so much of this, I think really reflects that. And that's a good lesson for us all. Thank you.
Dawn, thank you. Susan.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it was just so fantastic. And just, I think all of us just learning about you saw the words resilience, your grit. But the thing I want to highlight too is your integrity, right? When you're an entrepreneur and you have all these opportunities and you know that you need money and you need support, you have impeccable integrity. And that is just so lovely to see. And so thank you, Dawn. Thank you for what you did. And Sherry, thank you for being here. We'd love you to become part of this community. So it's the same link every Wednesday. So it'd be just incredibly awesome for you to come back and hang with us.
I would love that.
We always ask, what can we do for you?
Wow. At this time, I'm obviously looking for funding. I'm looking for, any kind of strategic partnerships to, be able to get into schools and things like that. So if any of you think you might have any kind of connections to connect me with, I would be very appreciative.
And I think we definitely do. I mean, we have a few people here that have connections to Harvard for sure, and MIT and a few other schools. So yeah, we'll definitely follow up with that as well.
Susan, thank you. Sherry, really a pleasure. Your time is priceless. I'm going to end the recording, but just as a little reminder, next week our very own Sri, then Jorg, and then Andrea, who are actually all on this call. So at some point, so please come join us for the upcoming sessions. Please stick around.